Today we're going to walk you through the tutorial for the Riley Blake Pillow of the Month. This is August pillow, which you should have received sometime in July. In this pillow, there are 3 basic blocks that we're going to learn how to do today. We have the 4 patch that we're going to add a couple of pieces onto, flying geese, and then a block that just has corner squares on it. Pretty simple. I'm not sure if we've used these techniques in prior months, but we'll get through them. So let's start with the basic 4 patch. What I want you to be cognizant of is that you are making 2 different 4 patches. So please make sure that you watch the orientation of your fabric. One of them has you put the stripes in the upper left-hand corner, and one has you put the polka dots in the upper left-hand corner. You'll need to make 2 of both orientations. I've left the stripes to show you. So I'm just going to take my stripe on top of my dot fabric. I'm going to come over to my machine, sew a nice 1/4" seam. The directions tell me to press this to the stripes. So I'm going to take my iron, set my seam, and then press the fabric to the stripe. Now we're going to take those and line them up so we have stripes in the upper left hand, stripes in the lower right hand. We're going to butt our seams together. Remember, to butt our seams, it just means that we have seam allowances going in opposite directions. That helps your seams nest together so that you have a nice sharp seam there, so it looks like it's just continuous. I like to use pins. Not everyone does. Usually when I pin, I put one at the bottom to hold it in place. I put one perpendicular to that. I always put one at where my seams meet, and then I do the same thing that I did on this end to my other end. Go back to your machine, sew your 1/4" seam again. Take out your pins as you get to them. Try not to ever sew over your pins. You can throw your machine out of timing. You may notice that I have the 57D foot on the machine today. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you know I love my 57D. It gives me a nice, accurate 1/4" seam every time. I set my seam. I'm going to press that seam again. So now I have my 4 patch completed. I'm looking at my directions. It tells me that I need to sew a blue stripe or a blue rectangle onto one edge, and then the rectangle with the pink square on the other edge. So what I'm going to do, just so I make sure that I have this correct, is I'm going to look at my final placement. So this is going to go here. This will be here with my pink dot on here and the other blue rectangle here. So I'm just going to take this on over to my machine, sew a 1/4" seam again. I like to have, in this case, I like to have the portion of the block that has a seam allowance up, so that I can make sure it doesn't go wonky on me as I'm sewing. Again, you can pin these, or you can just guide them straight as you're going. I'm also going to take this rectangle and this square, I'm going to put it together and sew a 1/4" seam on that. always refer to your directions, and they're really good about telling you which way they want you to press your seams. So in this case, it is wanting me to press this down. So again, make sure that you set your seam. For this one, it's telling me to press it toward my blue fabric. You'll notice I'm using the Panasonic cordless iron. Works great for demonstrations like this. Now I'm going to take these two, I'm going to put them together. Again, I'm going to make sure my seams are butted up, and I'm going to sew this 1/4 inch seam. When I'm all done, I'm just going to press it open, and it's going to be right there. Okay? I'm sure you're all capable of doing that. So let's move on. Let's do our flying geese. Flying geese requires the pink rectangle, and it requires your 2 red squares. Now when you're taking these red squares, remember we have to draw this diagonal line down the middle of our squares. Take your ruler, obviously it doesn't have to be this big, it was just what was convenient and handy. I'm taking, in this case, I have an air erase marker. You can use a mechanical pencil, anything, if it's not going to show through, because this is pretty dark fabric, so I don't have to worry about it showing through on me. I'm going to put this on here. You'll notice that my diagonal goes across my rectangular piece. And I'm going to put 2 pins in this just so it doesn't move on me. Now the key to getting nice flying geese and also half square triangles is I'm going to, in the end, take this part of my triangle and fold it up over here. So I want to stitch on the opposite side of my line. I don't want to veer away from my line, but I want to be on the left side of this line as I stitch. If I'm on the right side, it's going to make my triangle too small. So I'm just going to put this underneath my machine. Of course, our goal is to sew on that line, but let's face it, the line has some depth to it because we used a marker to make it. So it's not perfectly thin. So I want to sew to the left of it. I'm going to take my block, set my seam, and now I'm going to turn my corner up. You'll notice that my corner pretty much covers that entire portion of the original rectangle. Now I'm going to go through, I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to trim this to 1/4 inch seam. In other words, I'm taking away my original peach color, pink color rectangle, and I'm taking away the other portion of the red square that I don't need. You may remember from previous videos, I've taught you that you can sew another 1/4 inch seam here if you're a scrap sewer, and it will net you a half square triangle. So if you like doing things with scraps, put that off to the side and do that in a little while. Take your second square that you've already drawn your diagonal line through, put it this time so that your diagonal line is going from the bottom right to the upper left. Again, put 2 pins in it so it stays in place. This time I'm bringing this side up, so I want to stitch on the right side of my line. set my seam again, press it open. We have a nice flying geese. Again, you're going to trim off that extra. That's going to become this portion of our block. We're basically going to do the same thing with our square and our peach color squares. So you'll notice I've already drawn that diagonal line. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it, making sure that it matches my blue fabric in the corners. Going to pin this on here. Remember, since the bottom is getting folded up, I'm going to sew on the left side of this line. So in other words, left side of my block, I sew on the left side of my diagonal. Right side of my block, I sew on the right side of my diagonal. We're going to do that same process, set our seam, press the triangle up. We're going to trim these back 2 layers again. We're going to trim them to 1/4 inch. After we trim it, then we're going to sew this block on. Just because this is a tutorial and you don't need to see me sit here and sew for 20 minutes, we're going to pretend that I have sewn this on here. I'm just going to hold it in place with some pins. Now I have all 3 of my blocks made. Next thing is I'm going to take this flying geese and I'm going to sew it to the square with the corners. When I do this, I like to have my flying geese piece at the bottom because that way I have a straight surface, and I'm going to have the part with my corners up. The reason I like to sew it that way is because I have the X where I want to stitch exactly. Don't go into your X. If you go into your X, you're cutting off your flying geese points here. So see what I mean? I brought my stitching right to where this X met. Nice 1/4 inch seam results in nice points. Nothing is cut off. So you're going to do that as well. And then we're just going to sew these 3 blocks in a row, and then we're going to sew that onto our pillow. By now, you've gotten the hang of making your back 2 flaps for your pillow and how to bind. So I'm not going to go through that with you. If you need a refresher on how to do that, visit one of our previous months. I hope you enjoy putting your August pillow together. See you next month. Okay, I guess I'm not done with this month's pillow because those of you who know me, you know I'm a perfectionist. And as soon as I turned off the video camera, I noticed my stripes on this block are going vertical. All my other stripes are going horizontal. Not a problem. I'm just going to take apart this block and fix it. That's all. See, everything's fixable in quilting. That's why I love it.